Michael Cole is with us. Michael, welcome to GB News. Let me just make sure that we've got our ducks in a row here, because I want to see Michael's handsome face. There we are. We've got you queued up. And, Michael, listen, you've been broadcasting for many years. You know about live telly. Great to have you in the studio. Do you think there's a risk that the Prince, who is now the King, that you know well, has waited too long for this role? Might there be a degree of rancour or bitterness now that he's finally King?
Cometh the hour, Mark, cometh the man. We have King Charles III. He has waited all his life since the age of 3. He knew his fate. He would be king one day if he survived his mother. I think we must say that, let's give him credit, it's very, very hard to be grieving in public with the eyes of the world on you. And I give him credit. He's made an extremely good start. That first televised address to the people, when he went out of his way to express love for his son, Harry, and his wife, Meghan, was a very good thing. And that prompted Prince William to make the call he had to make to his brother and say, come on, Harry, let's go down to the gates, let's meet the people. Also, the Accession Council, I think he cut an extremely dignified figure. And I think it's a very, very good sign, because it's not a question of whether he will be a good king. He has to be a good king for the continuation and prosperity of the House of Windsor and for our constitutional monarchy. We all are very fortunate to live in this country where a constitutional monarch is a very important bulwark, a defence against extremism, against dictatorships, and has been over the years. And I think he's going to be a good king. You mentioned, and quite rightly, and I think your summary worldview was excellent, you mentioned his previous life, his role as Prince of Wales, when he was writing Black Spider letters and he was lobbying ministers and he was pushing his causes, some right, some wrong. He was asked in an interview quite recently whether he would do that when he was king. And he said, no, of course not. It's a different role. He said, I'm not that stupid. You know, he said that so it was put to him. He has said quite clearly that he's pledged himself to continue the work of his mother, and what fantastic work she did over 8 decades, actually, because she dedicated her life when she was 21 to this country, her life, whether it be long or short. And we've all benefited from that. And I think he will do well. He's had a good apprenticeship. And the interesting thing is, obviously his reign is not going to be as long as his mother's. It cannot be. But a short reign can be very, very successful. Edward VII only reigned for 9 years. Queen Victoria died in 1901. He reigned until May 1910. But he gave his name to an era. It was the Edwardian era. Yeah. It was a golden age. He had a Derby winner. He was terribly popular. People were going on the Thames, smoking cigars, enjoying themselves. He went to France. He saw a beautiful French actress. He kissed her hand and said, Madam, you're as beautiful as France itself. And that cemented the Entente Cordiale. Yeah. That led, of course, to an alliance which meant that we were in the First World War alongside the French poilus in the trenches. And the Tommies there, you know, they said none of this would have happened if old King Teddy had been around, because he was the uncle of Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, and they felt that the king could have interceded to stop that. And it's very important because you said, has he waited too long? Edward VII said that he waited 20 years too long before he took over from Queen Victoria, and she wouldn't allow him to see anything. The Queen has inculcated him into the workings of the monarchy, not to the point of doing the red boxes and seeing all the secrets and so on, but we saw it. He and Prince William stood in for the Queen at the opening of Parliament. He's been ready for this his whole life, as indeed has the operation which we are seeing, London Bridge. I mean, it's all very well having a plan, but actually you have to put it into perfection. And my goodness, Hasn't it been brilliant so far?
Hasn't it been brilliant? And I agree with you that he's been pitch perfect so far. I can even forgive the Pengate drama, because I've never got on with a fountain pen myself. I think it showed he's human. He's also the king. You're allowed to be a little bit of a diva as the king of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I love fountain pens, let me just say. But he was always a little bit irascible, a little bit tetchy.
Yeah, a little bit cranky.
Yeah, he gets that from his grandfather. King George VI had a foul temper, but that was partly because of his speech impediment and expressing himself. But he has got that, and he's very unwise to let it show, even if it's there. But you're going to be talking about the Queen Consort Camilla soon. She has made him more grounded. She's made him happier. He's more content. He can control things. Now, today, on the Albert Embankment, where they went down there, meeting the crowds is not King Charles's forte, but he did it very well. There were some lovely choruses of God Save the King, but there were also a very rarely heard ditty, God Save the Prince of Wales, because when Prince William was there, he's a total natural. He's Diana's son. It comes naturally to him. And don't they love him? I mean, people were shouting out, I love you, I love you.
Well, they do, and I've said that in recent days, that William and Kate are box office. Is there a danger that King Charles will be under the shadow of his late great mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and in the current shadow of his son and daughter-in-law, the Prince and Princess of Wales? Could he fall between both stools?
I don't think so. I think he will establish himself. I think this will be quite an interesting reign. The people are already responding to him, and the comments that I've heard, random comments, have always been very, very positive. He certainly has huge goodwill.
Michael, you don't think he'll be looking at the papers and thinking, well, why are there more pictures of William and Kate? Why are they still talking about my mother? Will he not be sort of, thinking about it in that rather sort of territorial way?
No.
Is that not his nature?
No, he took him a few years to mature, but I think he has matured.
Was he not threatened by Diana's popularity?
Terribly. I remember filming in Vienna, in the Haymarket, and where my camera was the side of the road that he was, and Diana was over there, and they were all shouting, Diana, Diana, Diana. He said, you have to put up with me. She's over there, you know. I mean, he was. Had it been me, and they'd been cheering my wife, I would have been so pleased. I would have reflected glory on me for being so clever to choose my wife. But he didn't get on with that too well. But that was a long time ago. We're talking about 40 years ago. I think he's got over that. The country's got over that. It's 25 years since the tragic death of much-missed Diana.
Yeah.
We have to move on. Everybody's shown that. And I think even in many ordinary families, a family funeral, is a catalyst for mending fences, for coming together. And certainly he's taking the lead by expressing his love publicly for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle,
yes,
and the life that was a very good thing to do, and that's what the people want.
It was bold, wasn't it? It was a bold gesture.
It was, because there's real hurt and there's real resentment, because if you throw out a general accusation of racism, it's easy to make. It's impossible to refute. How do you prove a negative?
And it's 100% damaging.
Of course it is, because even if you're trying to refute it, you never will, because somebody will say, there must be something in it. It was very unfair, very unwise, and I think I would hope, as we've turned on to this subject, I would hope that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, particularly her, will look at this, look at the splendour, look at what the world's attention. This country is the centre of the world. Everybody is coming here. We are experiencing, Mark, these are days of history. They are days of history. And nobody could do it better. But that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is nobody's being bussed down there. Nobody's being told to go down there. Nobody's been ordered to wave a flag or shout out something. They're going to pay respect, or if you want a bigger word, because of their affection, or if you want an even bigger word, love. That's why they're going. And that, you can't buy that. You cannot buy that. Let me just tell you one thing about Her Majesty the Queen. I mean, I saw her around the world, from the frozen north of Saskatchewan to New Zealand to Kathmandu to the Bahamas, wherever it was.
By the way, you must have picked up a few air miles over the years. Drinks are on you.
Well, I never went on the Royal Plane, but we went. It was hard work, I promise you. But let me just tell you one thing, because the Queen was born in 1926. In 1926, the year of the Great General Strike, Ireland, the Irish Free State, was only 4 years old. And when the Queen went on her state visit to Ireland in 2011, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. China was great, but this was fantastic. The reason being is that nobody other than the Queen could have gone, because her grandfather, George V, signed the instrument that created the Irish Free State, that became ERA, that in 1949 became the Irish Republic. If a politician had gone, it wouldn't have meant anything. But she went to Croke Park, the site of the original Bloody Sunday. She went to the memorial in the gardens, to the martyrs, the people who died fighting for Irish independence. She bowed her head. She made a few words speaking in Erse at the beginning of the banquet. The Irish people, who are no mugs, they understand when somebody is phony and when somebody is real and genuine. They loved it, and they turned to her. And to go to the city of Cork, real hard Republican centre, nowhere more so than Cork, and charm people in the English market.
Probably dressed in green.
She was dressed in green. She was. The royal family all... I mean, I remember Diana arriving in Japan with a lovely sort of rising sun, white dress with lovely rising suns, and in Saudi Arabia all in green, because that's a lovely colour. That was nice. And nobody but the Queen could have done that. You know, it was a huge risk, because in 1956, in 1966, before the Troubles really began, the Queen was visiting Northern Ireland, and somebody on a building site dropped a huge big building block on the bonnet of her Rolls-Royce, and it made a dent there. You know, I mean, there is risk involved. And I'll tell you another thing. Let's widen it a bit, because the Commonwealth, the value of having a constitutional monarchy. Now, I was in Washington at the end of Watergate. Now, Watergate paralysed American government for 18 months. The head of state, the commander-in-chief of the forces, the font of all honours, Richard Nixon, was found to be just another crooked politician up to dirty tricks. And it took 18 months to resolve that. The country was paralysed politically.
No head of state?
No. The Canadians looked down and said, thank goodness we have a head of state who is above politics. Canada is the second biggest country in the world. What holds it together, or held it together? The Canadian National Railways and the Queen. Although she never went to school, speaks perfect French, President Macron has testified to that. She even went to Quebec when the separatist movement was at its height, and there were brickbats and there was the threat of violence. She faced it all down. She did that, and that was what was amazing about her. And she went to China, and I remember, it's not for me to be proud of the monarch, but I was proud of her on many occasions. There she was standing in the Great Hall of the People in her shimmering white dress with the garter sash, with her jewels and with her tiara, making a speech to these, interesting, this comes back to it, to the hierarchy of the communist China, the people that Prince Charles unhelpfully and undiplomatically had described as ghastly old waxworks. So she had to go there, and she made a great speech of friendship, and it was met with inscrutability, and then the poor woman had to sit down and eat sea slug for dinner. You know, I mean, what she did.
Walking the walk. And this was very much the theme of my big opinion monologue, which is that our constitutional monarch wields no political power, which is why the king or queen is the one figure that can unite the nation, always. But they have colossal, soft diplomatic power and almost unlimited influence.
Absolutely.
So do you think Charles can make history? Will we have stories like this about King Charles in years to come?
Well, the great thing is the royal prerogative is quite clear. The monarch has the right to be consulted, in other words, to be informed, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. And when the monarch has the audience every week. The Prime Minister, to use the correct terminology, has an audience of the Queen or audience of the King. Mm. When that happens, that is completely sealed. There's no other people there. Nobody takes notes. There's never been a leak. And I always used to think it was rather like, the schoolboys bringing their homework to see the headmistress. Yeah. And it was said of the Queen, she listened to what they had to say and she asked questions and so on. And one of the most riveting things that could ever happen to a British Prime Minister was if the Queen raised an eyebrow and said, "Do you think this is entirely wise, Prime Minister?" And
do you think that became her catchphrase recently?
Well, I don't know. I think
last couple of years.
I think they would certainly think of it. And the prime ministers who have spoken about it have all said that they found it a very, very useful sounding board because they knew that they could speak frankly. They could say things to her that they couldn't say even to their closest colleagues, and it would never leak. Now, Prince Charles is in that position. He has his views. They're not going to change. Of course they're not. But
has the Queen had hers?
Yes, the Queen had hers. Of course she did. She had the views of a country gentlewoman, and she expressed them, I'm sure she did. But we don't know. That's the great thing about it. She was an enigma, and that was her power, because we didn't know. All these people who are going through in a way, they're projecting their own lives onto her life in a funny way.
And do you think that Charles will harness that power? Do you think that he will be disciplined enough to vent directly to the Prime Minister, which is in his gift, as you say, to warn and advise? But do you think he can keep it zipped in terms of the general public?
Well, he's got to.
Yeah.
I mean,
it wouldn't age well. It wouldn't play out well if he doesn't.
No, it wouldn't play out well. And he has been asked about it, and he said, I'm not that stupid. And of course, the Queen never went to school. She had tutors, and she had her father, and her father tutored her in the nuances of the British unwritten constitution. And it's very, very clear. There's tremendous value in having a constitutional monarchy, a tremendous value, and we should never, ever forget that.
Lots more to come from Michael Cole, one of the most respected royal journalists in the country. He's been there, he's got the T-shirt, he knows the royal family intimately well.